My first experience with Solatube, I actually installed them in my own home, which was about, I think, 12 years ago. And problem with my home, it was a 1951 sort of just off-the-shelf track house type of a home, and it had a lot of those interior bathrooms with no daylight. So I worked with Solatube to add daylight into those bathrooms, and it's really been remarkable. I've since expanded and added bathrooms and continued to use Solatubes throughout my own home. Just really love the whole idea of the room always being daylit. And I really had to bend the Solatube to get it to work into these bathrooms. So to actually still see that change of light quality is really remarkable. And it's changed the whole way the house looks and feels. I like to use daylighting as a design tool. As a sustainable designer and a sustainable architect, daylighting is a key factor in really effective and smart sustainable design. So anywhere we can, I like to use daylighting as part of the design aesthetic. I call it sort of taking a space and being able to sculpt light. And Solatubes gives you that freedom in a lot of different ways. There's so much variation in how it can be used and how it can be integrated into a space that it makes daylighting very easy and gives our clients that sense of connection to the external environment. So daylighting now becomes much more part of a design tool rather than just a necessity of a space. The ability to add daylight where it's needed the most within a corporate environment, within a residential environment, or in a retail environment. Now it's not so much regulated to certain areas. Daylight is something that we can pretty much introduce anywhere within the environment. So it's now opening up the whole floor plan for us to use as a design expression. And Solatube is really the tool that's brought us that freedom. We've seen it affect space planning, we've seen it affect design, we've seen it affect wayfinding, even as much as how we design furniture, how we design wall hangings, anything like that. Now we have the ability to create those natural shadow patterns throughout a space, which starts to really change the way in which we see interior volumes. We did a series of experimental stores for Walmart. The only 2 Walmart stores to ever win AIA Design Awards. And it was one of the first applications of Solatubes and of interior daylighting on a retail sales floor. You really don't want to stay in a space very long if there's absolutely no natural daylight. So when you start looking at retail sales, you start thinking about the fact that you want to keep people in stores longer so that they shop more, spend more. And it was amazing just the difference in the transformation it would make to the interior retail environment. People would actually shop longer, they'd stay in the space longer because of the whole idea of having daylight, natural daylight in a space. I think almost every one of my jobs I either proposed or actually utilized Solatubes, and it's something that I know I'll continue to use. Matter of fact, I'm proposing it on 2 other jobs right now. So the use of Solatubes coming through the roof quickly, easily, cost-effectively was really the most effective way to get daylight into those central environments and to really change the whole complexion of what that sort of inner office environment was all about. We recently did a corporate headquarters for a company called Pacific Dental Services, which was built in an old manufacturing plant. And they had very few windows along the perimeter of the space. And then when the space started to evolve and started to be constructed, one of the first things we did was add the Solatubes. So the light just came in all sorts of different ways, and it came through the existing structure. You got these incredible shadow patterns. And when the space finally was completed, it turned out that the interior environments were the most desired because those were the brightest and most optimistic spaces of the entire facility. And we see that a lot more too with a lot of our corporate environments, in that we're using Solatubes and natural daylighting to really brighten up those cores and to sort of turn a negative into a positive with regards to daylight. As you approach the reception desk, all of a sudden you see the sources of the daylight, and you see that they're Solatubes and they're grouped in this environment, and you have an understanding of how the light is brought into the space. But it's not till you really point them out that you realize, wow, this is really natural daylight, and this is coming in through the use of these elements. I love that sense of discovery with natural daylight, and Solatube gives you that effect. When we initially started to look at the Vine project, the problem was really all about that central lobby space. It was very internalized. It had one window and one glass door in the environment. So our goal was to really open up that environment. So we went in and actually pulled out a portion of that second level. So we started looking at the use of natural daylighting as a wayfinding device within the space and as an opportunity to really sculpt the environment through the use of daylight. It's funny, when you tend to spread things out over a ceiling environment, it doesn't get noticed as much as it does when you group something and create sort of a sculptural element out of it. So the first idea came in a series of group Solatubes within the lobby that we actually then incorporated a Barosol skin. What the Barosol skin did for us was to start to utilize that light well as almost an art piece within the space. So we were able to group that light source, use the Solatubes as that ability to bring in the natural daylight, and use the Barosol as an idea to sort of consolidate that light feature and really use it as a sculptural element in the new two-story volume within the lobby space. Well, in the Vine project, they were looking to attract a lot of smaller tenants. So that necessitated that we took that floor plate and really divided it up and created multi-tenant corridors throughout the space. So what we did is we actually used Solatubes at the intersections of those hallways. So what happened was, as you entered the environment, you were met with a Solatube, and then you actually saw that natural light once again in the distance. That would be the terminus of your destination. So the idea was that we were sort of bridging those 2 points through the use of natural daylight. So you're going from point A to point B, but the final result would be daylight to daylight. One of the really wonderful things about Solatubes, you're not restricted as far as structure, as far as existing building conditions. You can pretty much put them anywhere, and they can adjust through the extensions pretty much anywhere you need them to, within the office environment, within the retail environment, anywhere you're using within the residential environment. You still have the ability to see shadow patterns throughout the environment, which I find remarkable. I really even don't know how it's accomplished, but it's really amazing to be sitting in an environment and knowing that the light source is 12 feet away and still having that ability through Solatubes to see the change in shadow patterns and the movement of light. It's something that now I sort of take for granted. I know that I can put Solatubes anywhere and still have the same type of light quality in one area that I do in another. It's about sort of taking down those restrictions and taking down those barriers that you would see with traditional skylights or with perimeter glazing. It's really sort of opened up that whole ceiling plane for us now with regard to natural daylight. What I love about Solatubes in our own space is the change of light quality throughout the day that reflects what's happening outside. So you have that connection to the outdoor environment, which I think is imperative in smart, sustainable design. It's also imperative in creating healthy interior environments. So anytime you have that connection to what's happening in the exterior environment, I think it's going to provide a much more positive outlook with your interior staff. They have the desire to stay in their space longer. They're happier in that space longer because they have that connection to the exterior environment. We've gotten nothing but positive feedback from the introduction of Solatubes into corporate environments. The only criticism that we've received is that perhaps we didn't do enough of them. Let's do more of them. I think it's all about freedom for me as well as my clients. Now we're not so tied to, okay, we have to get everything on the window line and get as much daylight in from the perimeter as possible. It now gives us options. We can actually take that whole idea of daylight and move it to the interior of the space. And we do that quite a bit, just to kind of take those spaces that are typically the darkest areas of a building and lighten and brighten them and bring new life to them. I have to say, Solatubes is one of those rare products that you can always count on, and it's something that I think I'll always be using well into the future.